Lately, circumstances had conspired to unsettle my habitual content. Earlier that week, I'd encountered my friend Vera with her husband, Dr. Neil Hess. I was sneaking in a late afternoon jog on the bike path at the beach when I'd spotted them sauntering along ahead of me. Vera was a former employee of California Fidelity Insurance, for which I'd also worked. The two of them were accompanied that afternoon by their 18-month-old son in his stroller and a grinning golden retriever pup frolicking and prancing, tugging at his leash. We paused to chat, and I realized that in the 3.5 years since I'd last seen her, my life had changed barely a whit. Same apartment, same car, same work, same boyfriend in absentia in a relationship that was going no place. The revelation generated a prolonged pang of regret. Meanwhile, Henry, my beloved landlord, was off cruising the Caribbean in the company of his siblings and his sister-in-law Rosie, who owns the tavern half a block from my apartment. I'd been bringing in his mail, watering his houseplants once a week and his yard every couple of days. Rosie's restaurant would be closed for another 5 days, so until the three of them returned home, I couldn't even have supper in familiar surroundings. I know all of this sounds ever so faintly like whining, but I feel morally obliged to tell the truth. That Wednesday morning, I decided my attitude would greatly improve if I quit feeling sorry for myself and got my office squared away. To that end, I was perched on a low stool surrounded by cartons I hadn't unpacked since I'd moved into Lonnie's office 3.5 years before. This felt a little bit like Christmas, in that I was discovering items I'd long forgotten I had. I'd just reached the bottom of box number 3 when I heard a knock at the door. I yelled, "I'm here!" When I turned, Lieutenant Dolan was standing on the threshold, his hands sunk in the pockets of his tan raincoat. "Hey, what are you doing here? It's been months." I got up and dusted my hand on the seat of my jeans before extending it to him. His grip was strong and warm, his smile almost sheepish, as pleased to see me as I was to see him.
"I ran into Lonnie at the courthouse. He said you'd rented this place, so I thought I'd pop in."
"That's great. I appreciate the visit."
"I see you're getting settled."
"About time. I moved in February 15th and I haven't done a thing."
"I hear business is slow."
"It is, at least the kind of jobs I like." I watched while Con Dolan made a circuit of the room. He seemed ill at ease and covered his discomfort by wading through a steady stream of small talk. I couldn't imagine what he wanted, but I assumed he'd get down to his purpose in due course. I'd known him for 10 years, the greater portion of which he'd headed up the homicide unit of the Santa Teresa Police Department. He was currently out on a medical disability, sidelined by a series of heart attacks. I'd heard he was eager to return to work full-time. According to the scuttlebutt, his chances ran somewhere between slim and none. He was in his early 60s, and his cardiac problems had left his complexion looking sour. The usual bags under his eyes had turned a dark, smoky shade, making his whole face seem sunken in circulatory gloom. His face had tended to be pouchy in the best of times, but now his mouth was pulled down in a permanent expression of malcontent. Just my kind of guy. I said, "So, what's up?"
"I'm on my way to lunch and thought you might join me, if you're free, that is."
I glanced at my watch. It was only 10:25. "Sure, I could do that. Let me get my bag and my jacket and I'll meet you out in front." We took off on foot, walking to the corner where we turned right and headed north on Santa Teresa Street. I thought we'd be going to the Del Mar or the Arcade, 2 restaurants where guys from the PD gravitated for lunch. Instead, we soldiered on for another 3 blocks and finally turned into a hole in the wall known as Sneaky Pete's. The place was largely empty, 1 couple at a table and a smattering of day drinkers sitting at the far end of the bar. Dolan took a seat at the near end, and I settled myself on the stool to his left. The bartender laid her cigarette in an ashtray, reached for a bottle of Old Forester, and poured him a drink before he opened his mouth. He paused to light a cigarette, and then he caught my look.
"What?"
"Well, gee, Lieutenant Dolan, I was just wondering if this was part of your cardiac rehabilitation." He turned to the bartender.
"She thinks I don't take very good care of myself."